And gentlemen, it's time for question time. If ever you have any question to ask, you can direct your questions to me, and if the questions are relevant, I will direct it to the panelist. Please, no speeches, but minor comment after a question it will do. So if ever anyone has any question, anything to ask, any precise issue, you can come forward. I think there is a mobile mic going around. This means everybody has understood the questions.
It doesn't mean that I'm not understood. Sorry. It's a question that I address both to Rishika and to Professor Schechner. And it's very interesting that the whole talk began with this issue of archiving. And I hope that I don't go into a speech, but I just have to say something, is that there is always an asymmetry in the flow of knowledge. So when willy-nilly the scholars took up Ramnagar, Ramleela, and the others who received it and read it and saw it, whether it's through the archives or it's through the writing, somehow that became the parameters of what Ramleela, the authentic, the good, the grand Ramleela should be, in the same way that the Ramanand Sagar's TV serial did to Ramayana. So you began by saying that the archives are different here in terms of that, they are not looking for an authenticity. They may not be, but the receiver of that archives tends to then canonize traditions in a manner that other traditions, there are not necessarily, Swarupas who are 15 or 16 years old.
What is the question? What is the question?
This is the question itself. The second question is that it's not always the Brahmins who are the Swarupas. Third is that it's also the Ramleelas are performed by Muslims. So when we receive this knowledge in an asymmetrical world, then the canonization bounds to happen. That's all. And maybe you'd like to say something about it.
Well, Mali, this is not, I would like to meet with you privately to discuss this in some detail. In this situation, I can say there is participation, experience, and archiving in terms of the depth one is in. I am not I'm not from the place, so I am experiencing, but I'm not the same. The danger of that you propose of normativity or authenticity is always the danger of archive. It's a rock and a hard place. If you don't archive, things tend to be forgotten. So I look with great interest at the photographs, just a few photographs from the 1920s, and I wish there were more. I look at the Princeps and I say between 1829 and 1920 there's nothing. I wish there were more. So I'm very clear that I am dealing with a particular Ramleela, not the Ramleela, a Ramleela, and its particular and peculiar history. I didn't say, but obviously, but it's not so obvious. All the performers are Brahmin males, with the exception of the little boy demons, who anybody can be a little boy demon. The image makers and the fire illuminations and for arti and the care and driving of the elephants are all Muslim. So it maintains a certain kind of social structure derived from the Hindu kingship that the Maharaja Benares was. I didn't say anything about him representing Shiva and the relationship of Varanasi, Benares, Kashi, etc. So I think that we have a lot to talk about, so I hope we were able to do it.
Precise. Any other questions? You have to give time to other people also.
Yes, I'll keep it very brief. The idea of the paper was exactly to break that understanding of the archive as they are understood, as presenting an authentic and original and a comprehensive collection. Also, the problem with the good part about Dr. Prasad's presentation was that it is historically grounded. You can trace the years when Indians moved to Suriname. With India, what happens is that we have this tendency of calling everything from the past. Everything is centuries old. And the archives is helping to trace a performance. I grew up with Ramleela in India. I knew that they're not adolescent boys, they're not Brahmins. And that is exactly what the Ramnagar archives does, that it shows a specificity of it. And I ended by saying that it is only a fragment of it, and listening to everyone we will be able to contribute to that historicity. So it is a specificity of a performance that I was presenting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Say something and ask something. In Suriname, one Ramleela group present really flying Hanuman. He flies with modern technology. I want to ask if another country is also so. Yes. No, not that idea. He flies really.
So, in fact, it was Hanuman, not Spider-Man or Superman.
Hanuman.
Hanuman flies in the imagination. What Hanuman does, I'll show tonight. He comes to a spot that is maybe only 2 meters long. One side is India, one side is Lanka, and he is carried over. He leaps over, but it's a short distance that a human could leap, and it represents what the monkey god did.
Yes.
He doesn't actually fly 600 leagues.
I think the Ramnagar Ramleela also has the flying chariot at one point of time. The Indra's Pushpaka is literally moved through wires. So that is the flying chariot there.
Yes.
Sitaram, everyone. I'm Kamalwati Ramsabe, President of the National Ramleela Council of Trinidad and Tobago.
Everybody knows you.
Okay. All right. One piece of information, but I will also ask a question of Suriname's Bahai. In Dr. Sat's Balkaran-Singh PhD thesis, which I read recently, he has some information about the first Ramleela that was performed, and probably Dr. Sat will speak about that a little later, where he got the research from and so on. I can't remember the name that he quoted, who did the research. But it dates back to Lord Krishna, right? So he could probably expand on that. That's one. Number two, as one of our close neighbors, Suriname, the council has been to Carifesta in Guyana, went out for the first time internationally in 2008. And we were really excited about Carifesta in Suriname, which is starting on the 16th. So I'm going to ask several questions here. Can you tell us how many surviving Ramleela groups you have in Suriname right now, where they're located, how do they do their Ramleela, and if any Ramleela is included in Carifesta, like it was included in Guyana, going from Trinidad? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have at this moment 3 groups who are active. And the groups are in one big district. I mentioned 5 districts in Suriname where Indians live. And the district is Wanica. And they mainly play in August, September. And Carifesta starts, I think, 16 August. And at the end of August, there's also a Ramleela presentation. it is maybe not in the program of the Carifesta, but what we ask is that one day the group, the participants of the Carifesta can visit the Ramleela in Wanica. Okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Of course, we are neighbors. Suriname, Guyana, and Trinidad is not far. I think in the future, we have to work closer to do better than we had now. Thank you.
Okay. We have a couple of minutes for
Yes.
question time.
Namaskar, Bhaiya. My name is Bhaskar Sharma from Toronto. I would like to congratulate all you great people that is putting this magnificent program together. Can any one of you tell me when you expect to have this also in multicultural Toronto, so that at least the Canadian government can be exposed to the uniqueness of this culture and even get themselves some votes in Ontario? Tulsidas Ji is known to us as the greatest poet where the Ramayana is concerned. Would anyone be executing also his contribution to our music? I know Dr. Sat is here. I would like to say and to hear from this group when he composed music in Chaptal, Namamisha Mishana Nirvana Rupam, in Rupaktal, Sri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajaman, and the Chaupais. It would be nice if someone can execute this for us so that we can also see the beauty of his contribution to Bharatiya Sangeet, classical music. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it was not a question, but we appreciate what he said. Any further question? We have got a couple of minutes more. Otherwise, I will do the winding up. I will summarize the whole situation. Any more question? So, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed for tea break, my observation of the whole situation, you see that Ramleela is a universal phenomena going beyond psychological and territorial barriers. Dr. Richard Sneh is a living evidence, somebody working, researching extensively on Ramleela, and somebody from India archiving his collections. It is significant in itself if you can understand the essence. Other than that, when we talk of Ramleela, so we talk of Ram. Ram, basically, we all know, as per our scriptures, he was the incarnation of Vishnu. And so was Krishna the incarnation of Vishnu. And Hanuman was the incarnation of Shiva. I have to say something very precise. You have to read in between the lines. I will not have time to elaborate. But you will have to understand the undertones. I won't be able to elaborate. There is no time for that. Who was Rama? Forget about his godhood. Forget about his Buddhahood. Rama was a king of Ayodhya. Krishna was a king of Dwarika. At that time, king meant what? Rama was in contemporary terms, he was a president with executive power of Ayodhya. His brothers were taking care of the state affairs. Lakshman, Shatrughan, and Bharat. Who was Krishna? Krishna was a president, the king of Dwarika. His army's name was Shiv Sena. It was so vishal, so huge. And he had the executive power. He had the executive power. The father of Krishna, Vasudeva. He was the prime minister of Kans. Kans, the king of Mathura. Father of Krishna was a prime minister of Kans, the demon. And who was Hanuman? Hanuman was a prime minister of Sugriv, of Kishkinda. Who is executive powers? I am just saying these few lines. You can confirm, any Pandit can confirm that from the scriptures. More than that, I won't say anything. It's up to you to understand what I mean to say. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'll introduce the speakers in the order in which they'll be presenting. Dr. Jerome Telucksingh is a lecturer in the Department of History, same university, University of West Indies, where I work, and I know him as the dynamic spirit in that department. All right, he's led a number of conferences. In fact, he was most recently, was that a year or two ago, Jerome, we shared in a conference on the Black Power, the 1970 Black Power movement, and he was, in fact, the convener of that conference. He is presenting today his first documentary, because normally he works through paper, writing papers and so on, but today he's attempted a documentary on changing culture, the views of Ramleela in Trinidad and Tobago. So we're looking forward to that. I'll let me introduce all three, and then I'll ask you to come up. Dr. Primnath Gooptar, whom you met last night. He is, of course, the convener and chair of our conference, our present conference. He was a school teacher, a retired school principal, a writer and biographer, and a well-known social worker. He's well known in the communities, and particularly in Sangre Grande, and cultural promoter. He's been involved in Ramleela for the last 23 years, and he's a founding member of the Sangre Grande Ramleela Committee and the National Ramleela Council. Okay. And as I said, he's the chair of this conference. Dr. Satnarayan Balkaran Singh, who's also a member and advisor to the Ramleela Council, is a former senior public servant. He spans a number of, and he has a very long resume, which I won't attempt to quote from. But he was a former senior public officer in the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. He's a researcher, an author, an advisor, of course, to the National Council. And he's very well known, not only in Trinidad, but internationally, as a performing artist. He's a choreographer and dancer, an exquisite dancer. He is a part-time lecturer at UWI and a consultant in policy and strategic and project planning and in culture. He has produced and directed, performed locally and internationally, off-Broadway, and for a number of heads of state and so on. He holds a BA, an MSc in project planning, and recently he received his doctorate in cultural studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. As did Dr. Gooptar as well, okay? So we're very fortunate in this panel because we have two experienced Ramleela persons and members of the organizing committee as well, okay? And of course we welcome our lecturer in history, Dr. Jerome Telucksingh, as the first presenter. Dr. Telucksingh.
Thanks very much, Mr. Gibbons. I wouldn't say much. I just want to start a documentary, and I want to thank Ms. Fiola St. Bernard for assisting with the taping and the editing. All right, you know, it's a very time-consuming project. So thank you very much, Fiola, and I will be glad to answer any questions. These people are Trinidadians being interviewed, and I specifically tried to cut across the gender lines, and I also interviewed non-Hindus so we can get a better idea about how people view Ramleela. So thank you all.
Do you believe Ramleela is a national festival in Trinidad and Tobago?
Not so much. And it's because the participation in Ramleela has mostly been Indian and mostly been Hindu, although I know that there have been Muslims participating. And I know also that Muslims asked sometimes to participate in Ramleela. And also there are Hindus who fast sometimes in an Islamic way, who build who stay structures, that there's that kind of interaction taking place with both festivals. It's the ability to bring in other people and other sort of different religions, different nationalities. The space is there for it. But I don't know how much you know, it is promoted as a national festival for other people to know about it and be included in it, even as onlookers. Although
a widow. My Lord, stay as the sovereign king of Lanka. It's already big. They stoop and they say they are sorry. That's all you have to do. Angad told you, Hanuman told you. Oh Ravan, please I beg of you. Please.
In terms of the casting in Ramleela, tell me a bit about the involvement of women in Ramleela.
In the early days of Ramleela,
in Trinidad and Tobago.
In Trinidad and Tobago, and in India. In fact, because it came from India with our ancestors when they came on the internship program. Before they had other plays that they dance dramas that they did, such as Raja Harishchandra. There were others like the Sarwani dance and the Sabha dance, and these were really dramas, plays that were based on the aspects of the Ramayana or some aspect of including. All the actors were men. There were no women in those things. So in Ramleela also was the same thing. There were no women in Ramleela, none whatsoever, until we started in Simon Gandhi, and we changed that. In fact, when we started on the first year in 1990-91 period, Sita was played by a boy, so that all the female characters were men, and that's how the people who taught us Ramleela taught us like that. But 2 years later, we decided to change it because a lot of the women wanted to play, and we started to introduce women as players. There were a number of people who were against it, particularly the older ones. But we broke that chain and introduced women, and there throughout the country now, you have women playing a number of roles and so on.
Do you believe that Ramleela is able to transcend gender barriers, age barriers, religious barriers, class barriers, and possibly geographical barriers? Do you believe like people from the urban area like San Fernando will say we are going to Philly City, or somebody from Port of Spain will say they're going down Roselac to see? Do you believe these barriers are being crossed, or do you believe that it remains at a small scale at the village level, promoting village and community unity?
Well, it is being crossed, and bridges are being built. We find that whenever there is a function, whether it's a Ramayana or Yajna or some other event, the community involved, the outsiders, to put it that way, you have the inside and the outside. And it starts with calling the people who are in government, parliamentary representatives, the various prominent people who came out of the community to come back and give something of their intellectual resource, as well as, you know, the social atmosphere, building the bridge. Now I understand people leave Arima and Kumoto to go down Cedras Tobago. There are mine and Ramleela. Ramleela is just one aspect. But there are mine, a large number of homes over time. They schedule their Ramayana and it's transmitted on the
radio stations.
The radio announcers tell you they are doing it from this village or from this home and families. People need now Canada and so on coming down to ensure that we have.
Headed for that mountain cave and seeking out paper, engage in that special sacrifice. He's going to forgive him. But when you do penance, you must not get angry. He will try his best not to get angry. But the boobies, what they out the sacrificial fire, they forgive him, they turn him upside down. They beat him, they did all everything possible. Big man tries not to get angry. Yet the boobies walk the clock and push their feet.
Now, how do you see Ramleela being depicted today in Trinidad and Tobago? Is it being accurately depicted?
From what I have known Ramleela to be, what I am seeing now is a little different. And the difference is, and I'm speaking from experience here, Jerome, I'm really speaking from experience here. When you are an actor, there, especially characters like Ram, Mother, and Trijita, and Ram, and Sita, and Ravan, and Hanuman, and all of those top characters. It's an art. It's an art. And the art is, there are ways that you do it. You don't put on a sari and say, I'm Mata Kaushalya. That's not good enough. When you put on the garments of Mata Kaushalya, you must not only look it, but you must act it. Like for instance, one, you must know how to walk. There's an art in walking.
Gracefully.
Gracefully. There's a certain way that you will have to lift your head. If you are turning, there's an art in turning. And when they are acting like that, there's a way in doing it. Because why? We are sending a message to the younger ones out in society. Hindus, Muslim, Christian. We are sending a message. And the message is not only speaking, but the message in the way how we walked, the way how we carry about ourselves, the way how we sit, the way how we speak. And this in itself is a teaching for those who do not understand Ramayana, who do not understand Hindi. But when they looked at you, the way how you carry about yourself, you said, yes, this is God. So that in itself is where the character becomes the role model for the future.
For young people. What are the benefits of Ramleela to a community or to the nation?
Well, family builds communities, and if you accept that communities build a nation, then I can show you a lot of benefits to the family and the communities where Ramleela I have throughout the country. For instance, when people go and get involved in Ramleela, they learn discipline. Because once you get involved in acting, in drama and so on, you have to have a certain amount of discipline. A number of people also sleep on the ground during Ramleela. That's a different discipline in itself, being outside of your room and so on. Self-esteem is another thing. A lot of people have never held a microphone or have never acted or done anything in front of other people. And here you have thousands of people for Ramleela. Like whenever Rawle is burnt in Sangriani, we have about 10,000 people coming out on the grounds. And people go out there and they do their parts. These things help them to build self-esteem. And that for me is one of the greatest benefits. I have seen people change in Ramleela. It also, there's a Negro chap who associates with us, and he has been playing Ramleela for 20 years. And recently I asked him, how has Ramleela benefited you over the years? And he said, had it not been for Ramleela, he would have been in drugs. He would have been, gone astray.
Correct.
And these are the kind of benefits that you get from Ramleela. Being active, being involved in it. There are a lot of community benefits, the community coming together. People learn skills. There are a lot of people who come there. We have workshops to make decorations, to make costumes and so on. There are lots of people who don't know how to make any of these things. And when they come and I take them, I say, all right, this is what we want to get done. You show them once or twice, and they're able to.
It's a skill.
They learn a skill, and they practice and they make crowns, they make shirts, they do all kind of decorated shirts and so on. So there are lots of skills that go, and they have to bring the community together also. Because people, if you have families coming together, there are people who I know didn't talk to each other, and their children play in Ramleela, and through Ramleela, because their children are playing in something common, they come together and I see them talking, and they're happy.
Paras, I know you have been in the media for many years, and I know you have covered Ramleela also.
That's right.
What do you believe is the impact of Ramleela on village life, on communities?
What it attempts to is to knit communities together, right? It is a serious statement in Trinidad and Tobago, which could be duplicated elsewhere. Serious in the context that some people are not aware of the Indian cultural strengths and strains. Ramleela is street theatre, and that is an opportunity for the national populace to see an integral part of Hinduism, of Indian culture on display. In this context, it wields a sense of cohesiveness in the society. And it dispels rumors of negative thoughts that it's a myth. Ramleela is not a myth at all. It's a serious, religious, spiritual, and philosophical statement for all mankind. It has been around for generations, for thousands of years. But in today's society, we have to revalidate it in the context of technology and things of this nature, right? Wanton, disrespect for people, moral decay, social decadence, and things of this nature. And Ramleela is a tool, a lever to bring a sense of sanity, to arrest the decay in society. And it's not for the Indian community, it's for Trinidad and Tobago.
For that very informative documentary. Right, good. And we welcome Dr. Gooptar, Dr. Primnath Gooptar, to tell us about Ramleela and film in Trinidad.
Thank you very much, Rawle. Sitaram, everyone. My presentation is entitled Ramleela in Trinidad, and I'm looking at memory, identity, and the influence of cinema. And while I'm doing that, I'll be looking at some other issues around identity and how East Indians, or rather the early indentured immigrants, sought to keep their identity alive. Some of the information that I'm presenting here is taken from hand-me-down stories heard by people who are alive today. They've heard it from their parents and their grandparents, and so on. We're going to look at what they brought. We'll look at the early years, identity and their preservation, and we're going to touch on issues of purity and culture. What transpired in the later years, that's when Indian movies came, comparisons of the early years with what's happened when Indian movies came to Trinidad, and then we're going to look at some changes in identity. As I indicated, I'll be looking at identity in terms of the environmental settings that they met here in Trinidad when they came, what they used. We will look at issues of purity of culture and cultural practices and how the environment impacted